Let me do this last minute thing. All right. Okay. That's up. That's good to go. All right. So, welcome to the next live stream. And the title of this live stream is You Don't Have a People Problem, You Have a Process Clarity Problem. So, when it comes to the concept of processes, procedures, and things of that nature, that's my sweet spot when it comes to business. Because regardless of the type of business that you have, my tablet is updating, so you'll hear that in the background, but it's live TV, so it is what it is. But when you any type of business that you have, right, in order for it to be as truly successful as you want it to be, it's okay to have great marketing. It's okay to have great people. But if you don't have the right processes and procedures, and if you don't have your operations down, your business is going to be dead in the water, right? And when you look at the state of a lot of businesses right now, especially when it comes to extremely successful businesses like a Starbucks or a Chick-fil-A or even a McDonald's, they have boring SOPs in their business, but these SOPs, anyone that's brought on to the organization, they're easy to follow, and it helps create the same repeatable process at the end of the day, whether if you're trying to create a double quarter pounder with cheese, or if you are in the process of creating a mocha, latte, mate, satay, I really don't know what it's called, but you have processes in place to come up with the same product at the end of the day, right? And that's something that's not usually talked about because most people are just looking at the outside of their business and how it looks and how they serve their clients. But are you delivering your product or your service, aka serving your clients in a systematic way where they get the same repeatable results every single time? Now, that's not as sexy as how you market your business and say how you hit 100K or six figures or whatever the case may be. But most highly successful businesses that make 6K and belong have a certain amount of procedures in their business, right? So today, what I'm going to talk about is how a lot of businesses don't have that overall clarity. And I'm talking to business leaders where, as a business leader, you need to look at your processes, the lack thereof, or if your processes need to be redefined, retooled, streamlined, or whatever the case may be, before you even think about moving for your people, because your people follow your guidance. They follow your rules, your standards. But if you don't have any standards in your business, how can you hold them accountable of doing something or creating something or having a predictable outcome every single time? And this is where a lot of business owners don't want to hear this because the responsibility falls on them, right? As a whole, most leaders, business leaders, organizational leaders, or whatever have you, think they have a people problem. But maybe 7 times out of 10, or maybe even 9 times out of 10, it's not a people problem. It's more of a process clarity problem. You, as the leader, can you clearly explain, or do you have a document that clearly explains your most important procedures? Most business owners don't. They wing it, but at the same time, they have aspirations of scaling their business and becoming a multi-million-dollar organization, which every business should aim for. But if you don't have things documented, and if you don't have certain processes in place, you're never going to get there, right? And think of it like this. As a business owner, how crazy is it to have 12 or 13 different ways to get to the same goal. It makes no sense, right? But the thing is, a lot of business owners, they work, what is it, in their business as opposed to working on their business. But knowing that you have the proper processes and procedures in place, that's working more on your business. I've worked with a couple of clients where they have their SOPs. And for those that don't know, an SOP is an acronym for a standard operating procedure, right? But their SOPs are so tight that they can walk away, step away from the business, and have certain people in place with the right procedures, and the business can run on its own. However, to get to that point, there's a lot of, you have to dig deep, look at what the current process or the current state of that process is, and then also look at the future state. What would you like it to be? For example, current state is you have a business and you have no procedures within your business. Future state is, at the very least, you have a documented procedure for your most important process in your business, whether it's the onboarding, whether it's the product fulfillment, whatever it is, you have something clearly documented that points you in the right direction. And also, whether it's you or any one of your employees can jump in at any given time and still have the same predictable outcome, right? So why does this happen? Most part, when it comes to businesses or some organizations, we are more trained to manage people and not design systems, right? And it's the other way around. You have your systems in place, so you make it easier to manage your people, because if they are not following your system and something happens that deviates from that, you can automatically go back to the process. Excuse me, you can automatically go back to the person that is in the process. And if something has happened, you can stop him or her right then and there and retool them, retrain them, and make sure that they are following the process to a T. Because once again, you want to make sure that every single time you have a predictable outcome when it comes to your business. As an example, I just worked with a client who has a bakery, and one of her biggest problems was they have problems when they open up. They also have problems fulfilling orders, right? So having something that's simple when they open up is creating a step-by-step checklist. And we created that step-by-step checklist, so we have a very good understanding of what everything that it takes to open up their store, right? And I worked with her. What's the first thing that they want to do? As an example, you unlock the door. This may sound really bare bones and remedial, but when it comes to processes, you have to be as extremely granular as possible to make sure that you don't miss a step. So what's step one? You unlock the door. Step two, you turn on all the lights. What's step three? You make sure that the coffee is boiling. Step four, you take out the pastries that was set up last night, the night before, based off of the closeout procedure, and make sure that those are on display, right? So it's just a systematic things that anyone who's opening the store can do, but at the same time, you have that same predictable result. Most people don't want to do that because they are so afraid of predictability in their business, knowing that predictability is one of the keys to success. You have more business owners that feel better operating in chaos in their business and the unknown, as opposed to knowing if these are the steps that need to occur every single time in my business to gain a profit, gain a new client, or whatever have you, you will make sure that you get it done. But for the ones that operate in chaos, no harm, no foul, but I feel that they still need to feel a little bit more pain until they come on the side of wanting to have more procedures in their business to be more successful, right? Also, one thing that I see with a lot of leaders when I work with them, when things break, right, when you don't have that predictable outcome, we tend to blame the person as opposed to looking at the process, right? Even in my organization, when I created processes and I handed it off to someone else, and we start not to get the same predictable outcome, I looked at the process and realized that, and there's no knock to the person that was helping me, the procedure was a little bit too complex. So I had to, you know, scale it down so the person that's actually executing it now can actually do the job, right? So it wasn't the person couldn't understand, but it was just a little bit too complex for the person that's actually utilizing it. So had to adjust the procedure, get to the point where, you know, they understood it, and then we'll start to rock and roll, right? Before I even blame the individual for not following the procedure, does the procedure make sense to that person? But once again, with an organization that doesn't have procedures, we always tend to blame the person that's executing what needs to be done, as opposed to what this person having any trouble if I had something documented in front of them that they can follow step by step, right? So one key line that I always use when it comes to people who don't have any type of written documentation in their organization is, you can't hold people accountable to what was never clear. Let me say that again. You can't hold people accountable to something that was never clear, right? If it wasn't clear, if you just verbalized it, verbalizing it is one thing. That's one form of communication. But documenting what you need that person to do is, that's on a whole nother level of organization, right? But once again, when it comes to a lot of people in organizations, aka leadership, they look past the fact of holding themselves accountable to say, do I need this documented to make sure that I will have the same predictable outcome every single time, right? So when it comes into that, you want to ask yourself, where is clarity missing? Now, if you're just verbalizing what needs to get done in your organization and not documenting it, that's clearly a gap, right? There's no clarity, because if you also think about it, think about the game. If you played this as a kid, let's say there's 10 people in the room, right? There are 10 people in the room, and person one says something to person two says the same thing, or what they perceive as being the same thing, to from the second person to the third to the fourth to the fifth. By the time it gets to the 10th person, it's something totally different than what the first person said to the second one. But if you played that same game and you had it documented, and you took that document, person one put that in front of person two, and they read it, there is no misconception on what was said, because it was clearly documented, right? And based off of that, you want to make sure that you have a certain clarity when it comes to these overall procedures, right? So I call it the process clarity pyramid, right? So I'm going to take some time to break this framework down, right? So when it comes to this process pyramid, the first thing is, it's not based off of job titles, right? When it comes to processes and procedures, one department should be responsible for that overall procedure. And that's a problem that I've seen now working with clients. No one wants to claim ownership in any type of processes, even though you look for the outcome of that process, thus a sale or a proper onboarding or whatever that process is designed to do. But there's no owner, right? For example, in my business, I am the owner of all of my processes, because if I know that these are the things that I want done in my business, regardless of who I put it in front of, and I know that they're capable of doing it, and I know what I've written down they can comprehend, I should already expect a result. Or if I don't expect that result, I need to pinpoint exactly where the breakdown is and figure out what needs to be done to fix it, right? So when it comes to your procedures, you always have to have some sort of owner. So if you are a small business owner and you want procedures in your business, take accountability and take ownership in it, because ultimately you are responsible for the outcome of whatever you're trying to do, regardless if it's you're the person that's doing it, or you've hired an admin or a full-time employee or part-time, whatever the case may be. If this is the outcome that you want, in your business and you've written down that procedure, you should expect that outcome. Because if you don't, you need to dig in deeper to figure out what was the overall breakdown, right? Also, based off of that and within the procedure, you want to ask yourself another question. What results are you as the owner responsible for? Even if you have somebody executing the task, what are you responsible for? Let me save you the trouble. You are responsible of making sure that that job gets done, that task gets completed, or that predictable result gets done at the end of the day, right? Since you are the owner, you want to make sure that it gets from point A to point Z, right? And what decisions do you need to make? One, you need to make the decision as if the person outside of yourself, if you hired somebody to do this job, are they capable of doing it? Right? Do they have the proper skill set to get it done? Or two, can you train them with the documentation and other resources to make sure that even though they're new, this is the first time that they're seeing this, they know exactly what to do. Um, Rule of thumb, if you're in the process of creating procedures within your business and you need to train someone, here's the framework that I would highly suggest. This has worked thousands of times for me, and I know it will work for you. So you want to look at it like a three-pillar approach, okay? So the first time, if you're training someone on a new task and you have the proper documentation, the first time you actually go through the procedure while they watch, right? You show them step by step, you take the documentation step by step and show them how exactly what they need to do to complete the task. That's the first round. The second round is you actually do it with them. Okay. You're still leading the charge, but then there's certain moments where you will stop and have them check the procedure and take over at certain parts. Doing that gives the person that's actually doing it a clearer understanding of what needs to be done. And it can give them some confidence because they're actually getting in there while you are working with them. And then the third time is you actually have them do it themselves. You, as the person that's training them on the task with the procedures, you take a step back and then you be the watchful eye over them to make sure that they're doing what they are supposed to do. Usually that three-pillar approach usually works. Sometimes you may have to do more. In some instances, you may have to do less based off of the person that you're giving the task to. But as a rule of thumb, make sure that you go through this three-part training process when it comes to training them on something that they need to start doing. I promise you, it is something that will be a game changer, regardless if you're working in a restaurant, you are working as a mechanic, you are an accountant, regardless of what you're doing, you want to do it the first time while they watch. The second time, you do the process or the task with them. And then last but not least, you will be the one that takes a step back and have them actually go through the process, which is a game changer. And for anyone that will try that, please put your results in the comments. So I would love to hear how successful or some of the challenges that you came across when you're going through the process. Because anytime that I've done that, I've also figured out other ways that I can refine the process to actually make it better. Okay. The next piece that I want to talk about is from a quick connection standpoint. Most performance issues trace back to these two things. Okay. Once again, as you are a leader and you're training your people, retooling them or whatever, or training them on a new process, you want to make sure that the person on the other end totally understands what they're doing. And also on the flip side, it will be your goal to ask the person at certain moments, do you follow? Are you understanding what I'm saying? If you don't, please ask questions. Make it a friendly environment because you want them to catch on as quickly as possible. But at the same time, if they need you to repeat something or if they need to go over the documentation again, give them the space to do that. I see a lot of organizations fail, and that failing could be high turnover rate because, one, an organization doesn't have proper processes on how to execute a job, and secondly, they do not take the time out to train their people. They think just going over it once and verbalizing it is enough, knowing that that is something that it's not enough, because everyone has different learning styles. Some people catch on a lot quicker. Sometimes the person still could be a hard worker, but it may take a little bit longer for them to absorb the information, which is totally fine, right? Another thing, as the leader in your business or the leader in your organization, your job is to see people problems, right? Once again, is the person catching on as fast as you anticipated? Because if they haven't, what's the reason why? Is a conversation needs to happen? Do you actually need to give them enough runway to learn what they're doing and practice it, right? Don't expect someone to fully operate at an optimal level just based off of one day of training and verbalizing it. You want to give them the documentation, have them go over it. Once again, you do it the first time while they watch. The second time, you guys do it together. Then the third time, you sit back and watch them do it. That's why it's so important to make sure that you have this stuff written down and documented, because you just verbalize it, they're going to, as I say, get lost in the sauce, right? The last thing, and this is one thing that I see excuse me. So I see a lot of leaders do when it comes to their business, when it comes to processes, is they do not give the people that will be doing and executing the job enough time to make it their own, right? And anytime that I have a process and someone that I've contracted out or someone that's working with me on a particular project and they make it their own, that's something that I clearly love, because when it comes to processes and procedures, you have to understand that processes and procedures are always evolving, right? Just because you are the person that wrote down this documentation 4 years ago doesn't necessarily mean there isn't a better way to get the job done. And if there is a better way to get the job done, because my main focus when it comes to working with businesses is continuous improvement, right? If, as a rule of thumb, if you are not looking at your procedures with a fine-tooth comb and figuring out ways how to update the process, at least on an annual basis, you're falling behind. Because with the swift advance of technology and the swift advance of, even when it comes to, well, let's just stick with technology and AI and automation and things of that nature, there's always a better way for you to get something done, right? But people lose out in their business, or they lose out with money, is based off of the fact of feeling that once they've written down the process, that's how things should be done until the end of the business. But I've also seen businesses had to close shop based off of their competition because they did not evolve their processes with the time, right? If you have an opportunity based off of advancing your procedures to get double the output with half of the time, and you're not adapting to that, you're going to lose, right? But once again, as a leader, I see too many leaders quick to point the finger at the people that are actually doing the job, as opposed to taking a step back and saying, one, do I have processes in place? So if that person, I don't want to use the word quits, but if the person wins the lottery, because that's something that's the saying that I use at my job all the time, right? If the person that is currently executing the job, they, by the blessings of the good Lord, they win $50 million, they're not staying in that organization. They are leaving on the first thing smoking. But knowing that they're leaving, do you have things documented where the next person can come in and the learning curve to adjust to what they're doing is a lot shorter because it's written down. There's no, let me tell you what you have to do. You may take shortcuts. A person that's taking on a new task may not fully comprehend what's going on, but if it's fully documented in a very simple way, it makes it repeatable. And once again, when it comes to business, the more repeatable tasks that you can do, especially when it comes to your most important process, it creates, other avenues for you.
Look at that. Okay, let me quick switcheroo here. These batteries, boy, I tell you. Hold on. Let me get this going. Hope you guys can still hear me. We're going to keep it going and keep giving you this good knowledge while I switch out this battery that I thought I charged, but it isn't. Thank goodness I got another camera, so hopefully you guys can still hear me while I switch off these batteries. That's why I love live streams. So when stuff like this happens, you don't get embarrassed. We just adjust and do what we need to do to keep it moving. So since you guys can still hear me, let me go back to the other camera. Let's see. Switch here. And then go back here. Boom. We're back. And we back. So once again, I don't let stuff like that for live streams throw me off in a sense. And also, for anyone that's even thinking about live streaming, because this is a lesson learned, anybody thinking about a live streaming, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get 100 out of 100 with the live stream. Actually, stuff like this, hopefully I can resonate even more with my audience, because I'm not perfect when it comes to these live streams, but I want to make sure that I don't fail you guys, and make sure that even though the battery on the camera went out, and thank goodness I have my default camera, still here to give you this information while I pivot. Life is about pivoting. Live stream is about pivoting. When you pivot, just make sure that you continue to serve the people that you are serving, right? But I'm gonna actually end this live stream and just say, as any business owner that's out there that wants to be successful, and I'm pretty sure that's every business owner on the planet, you have to understand, regardless of how good your marketing is, regardless how good your people is, if you do not have the right processes and procedures, aka the step-by-step documented things that you need to do to execute in your business will be done sooner or later, right? Because any and everything can happen, both on a good side and a bad side. So as you are running your business right now, if you do not feel confident that if you hire someone new and you hand them the task that you are doing, are you setting that person up for success? A lot of times you're not, because just because you verbalize what they need to do doesn't necessarily mean that they have the proper training. And then also, especially in my business, I specialize in creating standard operating procedures. But a standard operating procedure to start out with, it could be you just writing down on now let's be more professional. Okay, you start out by writing it down, but getting on Microsoft Word or Google Docs or whatever the case may be, and typing out, here's how you open the store. Number one, unlock the door. Number two, turn on the lights in the front and the back. Step three, turn on the open side. Step four, turn on the coffee. It can be something as simple as that, but do not leave your people empty-handed and not knowing what they need to do on a regular basis, right? Because handing them that document, that documented process will give them a leg up to the point where they have something to refer to, they have something to study off of. Eventually, they can get to the point where they can go off of memory just based off of the fact of knowing what they need to do. What initially comes from the very beginning, you don't want to set your people up for failure and them not knowing what they need to do in your business. You, even as a business owner, even if it's only you need to document what you do on a regular basis, because as you grow, as you scale, however you want to look at it, the best thing that you can do to set your people up for success is knowing that um, they're in a good space, right? I cannot stress that enough, because one of the big things now is people want to scale. Scale is the sexy word. You will never be able to successfully scale in your business without documented procedures. And that's the piece that most people don't tell you, right? You just think that they can magically wave a wand and it gets to a point where they're you're going to scale. That's so not the case, and that's something that I do not want to leave you guys thinking. Right? You definitely need to scale when it comes to your business. So, thank you guys for your time, effort, and energy, and I'll continue to create more videos on how small business owners um, can become better with the right procedures, with the right documented procedures, and with the right operational systems in play, right? Because operational, think of it, think if your business is the bride, right? Your operational procedures is the groom. You put both of them together, you will have a wonderful marriage when it comes to your business. Talk to you later.